Imagine a time long, long ago, even before the famous pyramids of Egypt were built. There was a special place on our planet that historians now call Mesopotamia. The name itself is a clue to where it was. In an ancient language called Greek, it means the land between the rivers. These weren't just any rivers. They were two of the most important waterways in the ancient world, the Tigris and the Euphrates. These mighty rivers flowed down from the mountains in the north, carving a path through the dry land and creating a long, green valley full of life. This fertile stretch of land was a perfect place for people to settle down, grow food, and build homes. This remarkable region, often called the Fertile Crescent, was like an oasis in the middle of a vast, arid landscape. The rivers brought with them rich, dark soil called silt every year when they flooded. This silt was incredibly good for farming. People learned that if they planted seeds in this soil, crops like wheat and barley would grow in abundance. This reliable food source meant that people no longer had to wander from place to place, searching for things to eat. They could stay put, build permanent villages, and start a whole new way of living, a way that would change the course of human history forever. So, where exactly was this ancient land? If you were to look at a map of the world today, you would find that the heart of Mesopotamia lies almost entirely within the borders of the modern country of Iraq. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers still flow through Iraq, just as they did thousands of years ago. The landscape has changed, of course, with modern cities and towns now standing where ancient ones once thrived. But the fundamental geography, the two rivers that gave this land its name and its life, remains the same. This connection makes the history of Mesopotamia the very ancient history of Iraq. Understanding this location is key to understanding everything that happened there. The rivers were not just for farming, they were also ancient motorways. People used boats to travel up and down the Tigris and Euphrates, trading goods, sharing ideas, and sometimes, unfortunately, going to war. The land was open and flat, which made it easy for people to move around, but also made it vulnerable to invaders. This geography shaped the story of Mesopotamia, creating a place of constant change, incredible innovation, and powerful empires that rose and fell over many centuries, leaving a legacy we still feel today. Mesopotamia wasn't just important because people could grow lots of food there. It was important because it was a place where incredible new ideas were born, ideas that fundamentally changed how human beings lived together. It was here, in the southern part of Mesopotamia, in a region called Sumer, that people built the world's very first cities. These weren't just large villages, they were bustling centers of life with thousands of people, huge temples called ziggurats, busy markets, and organized governments. Cities like Uruk and Ur were pioneers, creating a blueprint for urban living that has been followed ever since. With so many people living together, life became more complicated. How do you keep track of who owns what? How do you record how much grain is stored in the temple? The Sumerians came up with a brilliant solution. They invented writing. Around 3200 BC, they developed a system using wedge-shaped marks pressed into wet clay tablets. We call this script cuneiform. This was a monumental leap for humanity. For the first time, people could record laws, write down stories, send messages, and pass knowledge from one generation to the next without having to rely solely on memory. The innovations didn't stop with cities and writing. The people of Mesopotamia were fantastic astronomers and mathematicians. They watched the stars and the planets, mapping their movements across the night sky. This helped them create the first calendars, which were vital for knowing when to plant and harvest their crops. They also developed a number system based on the number 60. Think about that for a moment. Why do we have 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour? It's a legacy that has traveled through thousands of years, right from ancient Mesopotamia to the watch on your wrist. Another incredible invention that emerged from this creative hotspot was the wheel. It seems so simple to us now, but the creation of the wheel around 3500 BC was revolutionary. At first, it was likely used for making pottery, allowing potters to shape clay more easily. Soon, however, people realized it could be turned on its side and used for transport. Carts with wheels made it possible to move heavy goods over long distances, transforming trade and travel. From the first city to the first laws and the first wheel, Mesopotamia was truly a cradle of civilization. The history of Mesopotamia is not the story of just one group of people. Instead, it's a long and dramatic parade of different civilizations, each one building upon the achievements of the last. The first great civilization to emerge were the Sumerians in the south. They were the trailblazers who invented writing, the wheel, and the city-state. They were organized into several independent cities, each with its own king and its own patron god. Their culture was rich with art, literature, and religion, and they laid the foundation for everything that was to come in the region. After the Sumerians, new groups rose to power. One of the most famous was the Babylonian Empire, led by its legendary king Hammurabi, who ruled around 1792 BC. Hammurabi is remembered for creating one of the world's first and most complete sets of written laws, known as the Code of Hammurabi. This code, carved onto a tall stone monument for all to see, established rules for everything from property disputes to crime and punishment. The Babylonians also turned their capital city, Babylon, into one of the most magnificent cities of the ancient world, a true wonder of its time. Further north along the Tigris River, another formidable power emerged, the Assyrians. The Assyrians were known for their military strength and their highly organized empire. They were fierce warriors who used iron weapons and war chariots to conquer vast territories, creating one of the largest empires the world had yet seen. Their kings, with names like Ashurbanipal, ruled from grand capital cities like Nineveh. But they weren't just warriors. They were also great builders and scholars. King Ashurbanipal created a huge library in Nineveh, collecting thousands of cuneiform tablets from all over Mesopotamia, preserving knowledge for the future. This pattern of rise and fall continued for centuries. The Babylonians rose to power again in what is known as the Neo-Babylonian Empire, under kings like Nebuchadnezzar II, who is said to have built the famous Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Eventually, however, Mesopotamia was conquered by outsiders, first the Persians from the east, and later by Alexander the Great and his Greek armies. Each new group brought its own language, culture, and ideas, adding new layers to the rich and complex history of the land between the two rivers, shaping its destiny. The long era of Mesopotamian empires eventually came to an end, but the story of the land itself continued. For thousands of years after the fall of Babylon, the region was ruled by a succession of different powers. The Persians, Greeks, Romans, Arabs, and later the Ottoman Turks all controlled this strategically important piece of land. Each empire left its mark, introducing new religions like Christianity and later Islam, new languages like Arabic, and new styles of art and architecture. The name Mesopotamia was used less and less, and the region became known by other names. The most significant transformation came with the spread of Islam in the 7th century AD. The Arabic language and Islamic culture became dominant, and the city of Baghdad, founded on the banks of the Tigris River not far from ancient Babylon, became one of the most important centers of learning, culture, and science in the entire world. For a period known as the Islamic Golden Age, Baghdad was a beacon of knowledge, attracting scholars, artists, and thinkers from far and wide, in many ways continuing the ancient Mesopotamian tradition of innovation and intellectual curiosity. The modern country we know as Iraq was formed much more recently. After the First World War, the Ottoman Empire collapsed, and its territories were divided up by European powers. In the 1920s, the British created the state of Iraq, drawing borders on a map that roughly corresponded to the ancient land of Mesopotamia. In 1932, Iraq became an independent nation. Its flag may be modern, and its government new, but its roots stretch back through millennia to the very first cities and empires that grew up along the Tigris and Euphrates. So why does this ancient history matter today? It matters because the legacy of Mesopotamia is all around us. The way we tell time, the laws we live by, the fact that we live in cities, and the very act of writing things down all have their origins in this incredible land. For the people of modern Iraq, this history is a source of immense national pride. The ancient ruins of Babylon, Nineveh, and Ur are still there, powerful reminders of a time when their land was the center of the world, the place where so much of our shared human story first began.